Hi, everybody. Thank you for your patience, and I apologize for the confusion. Technical difficulties are always fun in this day and age. As you guys know, my name is Matt Strain. This is the monthly free webinar series for the National At-Home Dad Network. Today, we have Dr. Julie Monaco with us. She's a family practice doctor. She is also my family's doctor, all four of us. And she's here to help us out with something that I've begun thinking about. My daughter is 7.5 now. So at some point in the next 4 or 5 years, she's going to enter puberty. And being a stay-at-home dad, odds are I'm going to be the one there when that time comes. And I don't have a lot of personal experience in this arena. So when it happens, I need to know what to do to be there for her as a parent and not make it any more traumatic or awkward for her than it has to be. So, if there's any way that, or any questions that anybody has, we'll open up the floor in the end. But until further, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Monaco. She is with UNC Hospital System.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself.
Yeah.
I am Julie Monaco. I'm a family physician. I've been, in lots of different practice situations, community health center, private practice, faculty practice, and now sort of a hybrid of faculty and just general, outpatient private practice as well. So lots of different practice settings to take care of lots of different people, and but all the while kind of taking care of families as a whole from birth. I do deliver babies and was up, as you can see in my scripts, was doing that last night, and then also till death. So a really unique opportunity, and thankful to have that perspective on life. So yeah, I actually, so on the other side of the job aspect of it, I have 2 girls myself. And my husband jokes always, if we had more kids, they'd still be girls and girls and girls. So a lot of girls in our house. They are 13, almost 14. So we are in the midst of it. And then 10, who's trying to be 16. So definitely have some personal experience as well. So I think it's absolutely fantastic that this topic is being brought out, in the open, in hopefully comfortable environment, and with the camaraderie that the Stay-at-Home Dad Network has for you all, because it's really important to lean on our friends, and it takes a village for all of this. It takes a village. All of you have kids, I know of different genders, different identities, as well as different ages. And it's nice to learn from others, because the firsthand experience is so much more valuable than just reading what the textbooks say. So, and most of us don't have time for reading the textbooks all the time. So I will, kind of, my plan for the talk today is just, this being a one-way type of setting for right now. I'm not going to be able to find out quite as much about who's participating and the ages, of the kids at home that you all are working with, obviously intimately. But we're going to just kind of talk about sort of the physiology of the menstrual cycle, just briefly, nothing too in-depth. And then we'll go ahead and talk about kind of some of the typical feelings that this elicits, both on the parental end as well as the child's or the young adult's end. We'll also go through, communication and how important that is, and some strategies for that, as well as how do we prepare? Because the more prepared we can be, the more comfortable we'll feel, and that will provide comfort for the child. And then lastly, I definitely want to touch on just in, how do we approach this conversation, and how do we help support non-binary children that we have going through this, that might not agree sort of, or feel comfortable with the physiologic changes that their body is going through, because they're identifying with another gender or non-gender particularly. So just some ways to approach it that way. So, all right. Anything, Matt, that you want to interject with now? Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
No, we're good. I do appreciate the fact that you're talking also about the fact that we do have kids and parents who don't or who are not, who identify differently as far as their gender, and that, it doesn't have to be your daughter in order for this to be an issue.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I've definitely had experience with patients, not as many in the younger adult realm, but as adults later on that are trans or non-binary, and just helping them kind of get through the monthly cycle that comes, and how do we try to minimize the emotional impact that has. So, all right. So kind of to bring you back to Science Class 101, in terms of Matt specifically being exactly correct with the timeline that we're thinking of, puberty typically for girls going through females between the ages of 10 to 15, that's a wide range. It has obviously been pushing the envelope on the earlier side more lately, just with improved nutrition, but also some thoughts about external hormones that get into our food systems, the increased, unfortunately, rate of obesity in kids. So we are sometimes seeing menstrual cycle starting in age 9 on some females. Usually though, as I don't want to say bystander, but also participant, as you watch your daughter grow and develop, usually 2 years after the onset of puberty is when we can typically kind of, okay, we have to start getting ready. We have to start being prepared, keeping some products in the house, educating her to be prepared for this. So 2 years after the onset of breast development, and usually about 6 months to 1 year after the onset of vaginal discharge. Now, I know you're like, how am I going to know? But if you're the one doing the laundry at home, you may notice it, on the undergarments, you may notice it that way. Or, some kids may come to you and say, I've had some kids say, oh, I'm peeing on myself, or I don't know what this, liquid is coming out. So that's great because they're opening that conversation up to you, but that's an early start, obviously, that the hormones are starting to increase, and you may be looking at a menstrual cycle starting in about 6 months to a year. This is an uncomfortable time. It's the most confusing time. If you probably ask most middle school teachers, they will say the same thing because they're with your kids all day. But just like any of us going through an uncomfortable or confusing time, support is the best. And just, if you're awkward, it's going to feel more awkward. So talking about the period and using kind of science, anatomical terms, you'll know your child the best. But oftentimes that helps when there's non-binary individuals involved, because it's a thing. It's not it doesn't have to be your friend, or it doesn't have to be your Aunt Flo. I mean, it could be for some people, that's how they may identify with it. But for others, it may be like, it is my menstrual cycle, or it is my monthly time of bleeding. So you can put it in more generic terms like that. So what happens, right? The hormones, get to the level where blood tissue begins to increase or sort of collect inside the uterus. Halfway through that month, usually it's a cycle, sometimes between 24 to 30 days. It's very, very irregular when it first starts. So the blood tissue will increase up and build up. And then as the egg gets released from the ovaries, it will sit there for a couple of days. If there is no sperm, and let's hope in our young children, there is no sperm to fertilize that egg will disintegrate. The lining will shed because it says, oh, there's no need for me to keep up a nice fluffy carpet lining in here to grow and develop this fertilized egg. So then the lining sheds, and that's the period, lasting anywhere between 5 to 7, sometimes 10 days on the longer end. Again, very variable, and will be variable. Usually after the first year or so, after the onset of the period, it will start to become more regular. And certainly if that's not the case, obviously take her to her doctor, and we will work on that a little bit more. Things that can influence the onset of the period in terms of timing. We talked about obesity as one, sometimes making it come a little bit earlier. The more physically active some kids are, in terms of, decreasing body fat percentiles, that can decrease, delay the onset of the cycle as well. So those are some of the variation factors. Oftentimes, and you may see this in your partners or other family members, there can be that PMS time, right? That premenstrual syndrome time. That can also go along with puberty. So you're like, is this just puberty, or is this something's coming up very soon? Those symptoms can be more consistent with headaches, sometimes some GI changes, actually, sometimes some diarrhea, sometimes some constipation. The intestines are very sensitive to the hormones. Lower energy, breast tenderness. They may complain about just, oh my gosh, I'm kind of sore. So, and then mood swings, of course, just sometimes flying off the handle and then being, excessively sullen or just, tearful. So keeping up with that support. They don't have to have a reason why they feel this way. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? It's like, okay, it is okay that you feel like this. And, going to those things that, typically cheer them up, going to those areas that offer them support or comfort is important. So that's really kind of the physiology behind it. And why it's happening. I think moving into that, the typical feelings that come with the period coming on, they feel super awkward. We could hear stories or think about they're in the middle of their school day and, they go to the bathroom like normal and all of a sudden there's something on their underwear. Oftentimes it will start as a dark brown type flow. And just a little bit of spotting on the underwear, and they may think I pooped my pants, right? And how freaky would that be for someone who's clearly probably been continent of their stool for a long time, be thinking about that. So you could also, again, notice that in the laundry, and would be a good idea to kind of bring that up. Embarrassment, shame, especially too, if there's some gender discomfort going on. This is a sign that a lot of people will say, oh, becoming a woman. Oh, welcome to womanhood. Oh, thank goodness you're not pregnant. That's not helpful. Okay. No. For some people, again, that may be helpful for their personalities. That may be something that they are super excited about. But for a lot of people, no, especially younger girls getting their menstrual cycle, they may still be playing with, some dolls, or they may still be playing, more kid-like games and be like, that's the furthest thing from what I want to do. So oftentimes with that shame, it's channeled to having a partner of the same gender talk to that child. And that can be very helpful. And again, dependent. In some families that does work very well, and that's what the child prefers. But this is a brave new world. As you all know, as stay-at-home dads are participating so much more in their children's upbringing. They're present so much more in their children's upbringing. So you need to dad up and be prepared to take on that role. And I think there's great comfort for that child in knowing, hey, my dad's pretty cool. Like, my dad can talk to me about this stuff and not get all, red in the face or stutter or stammer because, they're freaked out about this. I'm not saying underneath you might not be, but the external, vision is what you need to put forth. And just having this preparedness and awareness, I think will help calm some of that fear inside too. So I think the most important thing I typically say is, having a penis does not stop you from talking to a daughter about the menstrual cycle or about her period. So just remember that.
So when the time comes, which, inevitably it will, when that time comes, a lot of people talk about, being prepared. Now, if it happens at school or if it happens at home, I know this sounds like an odd question, but is there like an emergency grab bag that we should have available to help them out in that moment, with whatever feminine hygiene products are needed, maybe a candy bar, whatever, anything that might help make the moment a little bit easier for her?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a section on that, and we'll jump to that now, because I think I was going to talk a little bit about communication, but I touched on some of it, and I think we can cycle that back in. So that's a great point. I remember, this is so crazy, back in 5th grade. So, oh my goodness, I'm 48 years old. I think that's been a long time ago. I won't even try to do the math, but there was this like mail away package system that the school during health class, sent home to parents. You can get your starter kit, and what it came from and what it came with. And now, oh my goodness, we're living in an amazing day and age where there are so many products available. And yes, I think, at this point, when I talked about some of the physical characteristics that may manifest itself as a child's body is preparing for the menstrual cycle, you can start to think, hey, maybe I need to educate myself on these things, and I will do that for you today as best as I can. And then talking to your daughter about, hey, you know what? Let's just keep this in your backpack. Let's just have this. You know what? It's one of those things. We have it. It's not going to happen at that time, but let's have it, because you know what? It would be pretty rough to have to go through the school day or have to call me from school to say, hey, I need to change of clothes, or, God forbid, which happens oftentimes, if the flow gets to be heavier or she just doesn't realize it, you're actually, getting to stain the external clothes, and that we do not need to invite more attention than what she's already going to feel like she's getting by having this cycle start. So stocking up on the products. Now, some of you may have lots of sisters. You may be involved in your partner's, a monthly cycle and have been, making runs to the store to get different products, but others might not have. So, of course, there's the standard, the pads, right? Oh my gosh, are they diapers? Well, they have gotten much nicer, much less thick, with much better absorbency than they have in the past. There's plain pads. There's pads with wings that kind of wrap around the underwear, so it actually decreases the risk of leakage. And there's pads, of course, for lots of different flows. And in the beginning, don't be getting the big old super extra absorbent pads, because likely she's not going to need it. Likely it's going to feel bulky in her underwear and make the process even more uncomfortable. And the flow is usually not going to be super, super heavy the first couple days or even the first cycle. So pads are a great place to start. For athletically minded kids, swimmers, or just people who want to be active in the summertime, as they get used to and kind of get more comfortable with their body, tampons are, of course, a super easy thing to do. And again, much more discreet in the fact that, they can change the tampon every 2 hours, 4 hours, not going longer than 4 to 6 hours, certainly within, because you don't want to risk infection, but really helps that person feel probably just more free and less like, I've got this thing in my underwear today, just remembering to change it, because the number of times I've seen women come into our clinic, I think I lost my tampon, forgetting, and then they've put another one up there, and then the tampon's been in there for a month. That does increase risk of infection. Yes, I'm sorry, but that's the one thing I would just make sure you're referencing to your child about being responsible with it. So tampons, great. Panty liners are very, very thin pads and usually smaller. And those are great for sort of that first day of the cycle. Those are great for toward the end part of the cycle. Super thin, super discreet. Some women and some young girls like to use panty liners during increased vaginal discharge days because they don't like it. That's fine too. I usually recommend the non-scented, just plain old pads. You don't need to smell like flowers down there. You don't need to smell like apple blossoms. No, because that stuff is all going to increase the risk of vaginal infections and more discharge as well. So just stick to the basics. There's a zillion different kinds out there. There's the non-chlorine bleach ones. There's the regular ones. They come in fun packages now. So after you've gotten yourself educated about what's out there, it might be fun. Like just say, hey, look at this. If you even look at it online on Amazon, and make it fun for that person to pick out, this one has cool designs on the outside package, whatever gets them going, at this point. But it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
This may seem like an odd question, but just for me, I'm turning 50 in February, and over the course of my life, there have been times that I have quite easily gone to the store to take care of picking up tampons or panty liners for girlfriends, my wife, all the rest of it. I've never picked it up for a child. Do they make specific child-sized ones, or is it just the standard adult ones and there's just an extra small or something? I mean, my daughter is not on the large scale for the height chart at all. So she's not going to fit in the same thing that my wife does.
Sure. Sure. That's where, I mean, I think the pads are much more absorbent and you can get a lot thinner ones at this point. Sticking to the smaller pads, and they show you the sizes on the outside of the packages. They have had, they do have at times like teen, let's say like teen Playtex, and it'll be smaller tampons, and the tampons themselves, I think if you're really going to start for younger ones too, just using the smallest ones, the least absorbent, you do not need to go to super absorbency. Get a sense of what your daughter's cycle is like after a bit, and she'll get a sense of it. But I would err on the side of using the smaller, the smallest tampons that you can. With the plastic introducers, I think are the best ones to start with, because of the process of being comfortable with your vagina. Oh my gosh, I'm sticking something inside my vagina. And it's a lot easier for you to just say, you know what, you just put this plastic tube up there. It's very thin. And then you press the bottom plunger and there it is. And you take it out and you throw it away. Whereas tampons like OB, and some other more natural ones, you have to actually, take it out of the plastic packaging, and then you put your finger kind of in the base of the tampon and then stick it up inside the vagina. So it's just a little bit more cumbersome. I think it's great from an environmental standpoint, and at some point they can get to that. But I think this smaller, thinner tampons with the plastic introducer for the first start is better. And those tend to be, like you said, smaller for smaller folks. And then there are teen pads. They do make some teen pads. I mean, in the end of the day, I'm not sure how much smaller they really are, but some of the ones with wings tend to be a lot bigger. And so trying to put that in a younger child's underwear. So just using straight pads without the wings may be better in those situations. Okay. The other thing I will just mention, two other things that they have that could be a really great choice. If you just feel like you can't find a size that fits well, they've actually had a burgeoning business now of period underwear. So it's reusable underwear, but has a specific absorbency pad in it that actually can absorb. I mean, some of them I've seen advertised, can absorb 3 to 5 times the amount of blood that a tampon can. So whether you use it with a pad, so you could even use a panty liner, which is much more appropriate in size for the younger folks getting their cycle. In addition, and then if there's overflow, it will be absorbed by the underwear, and that's reusable. So those, there's a brand called Thinx, THINX, and I don't know, Matt, there's a couple of things, brands and some books actually as resources I was going to get to toward the end. That I don't know if there's a place on your website. I can send that information to you and you post it up or something. For future.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would be more than happy to post up the info. But yeah, please go over it at the end as well. Yep. Because we make these webinars available to everyone. So when it's on YouTube, somebody may be watching this a month or two from now.
Gotcha.
And then going back. So that information would be best to have like somewhere where it's said, as well as being able to be referenced.
Sure. So there's things. And then the last thing is the Diva Cup. And I'm not sure if any of y'all have experience with that with your partners, but it's almost like the diaphragm is a kind of older fashioned birth control. And it's a cup that does get inserted. There are some different sizes, and that just acts as a cup to collect the blood. And that is also super for kids who are really active and just want to be like, just put it in and forget it for a little while. That again does require some comfort with the vagina and the introduction of it, but I think very doable, and a lot of people really like it. So you can look for those Diva cups as well.
Okay.
I think that's really all in terms of the products. I think the more educated you are, the better it is. And I suggest just coming up with like an emergency pack and, putting it in a zippered, pencil case or something that they can stick into their backpack if they go to sports, when they go to school. Nobody has to know about it, but it's there if they need it. And having a collection of, a few panty liners, maybe a pad, maybe a couple of tampons, and then, you can just check on it and refill it as needed.
Okay.
I was going to go on. I'm not sure our time. I've been paying a little bit of attention, but just a little bit on communication, and then, touch base on the non-binary trans aspect of it. Is that?
Yeah, that's absolutely doable.
Okay.
I mean, we got a late start, and we're only at 10:40 right now. So, generally these run an hour, give or take. So you have plenty of time to say everything that you need to say and answer, hopefully, any questions that we get.
Yes. And I'd love that. If people have questions, I'm happy to, so much of it is individual too. I think this gives a little bit of a template, but there's so much individual questions that may come up. So we talked about how the more awkward we feel, the more awkward the situation becomes. Communication and education on the products is key. I think being proactive and say, hey, I'm going to support you with this. You don't have to, decide to sit down at breakfast someday and say, we're going to talk about getting your menstrual cycle. That's going to put her wah under the table and, tune everything out after that. The best times to be bringing these conversations up, or sort of, if a daughter says to you, hey, guess what? Susie, had to go home from school today because she got her period or something. Oh, well, hey, that's a great jumping off point to her to say, hey, what do you think about that? Or do a lot of your friends get their period? Do you all talk about that? Do you think that's going to, when do you think that might happen to you? And so open-ended questions are the best questions to ask. You don't need to pepper her with questions. I think really organizing this talk at a time when you may be driving in a car, that's oftentimes the best, right? Because that you're looking ahead, they can look ahead either out the window or somewhere else, but can be absorbing what you're saying. And there's less distraction with phones. There's less distraction with other siblings in the house or other activities. So that's oftentimes the least scary time for both people on each end to have this have conversations about puberty in general, or over a craft project or a project overall that you're doing. You can kind of generally work it in while they can focus on something else and maybe not show that they're feeling a little uncomfortable. Making the information accessible. It doesn't have to be like, okay, now it's Health 101. We're going to sit down and this is what we're talking about today at home. Getting some books on your own, and I have some of those suggestions that I can say. Hello Flow, the guide period is a great book, and there's a few others that I can mention in the end. There's a website actually specifically for dads called fatherly.com, and that has a lot of. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, Fatherly. Most of the stay-at-home dads, or at least I know it happened this way with me, is it started off with finding one or two dad sites, and little by little you kind of learn them all. Now, before we go on, we did get a question from one of our viewers on YouTube. Ian pointed out that he feels comfortable with the conversation about menstruation with his daughter. However, he's kind of freaked out about the whole showing how to do this, the actual inserting of tampons, disposal of pads, and that type of thing. Do you have any ideas on how to manage this? I mean, obviously, for some of us who are in who are in a heterosexual relationship, we can look to our wives and say, "Hey, can you show?" But we've got families in our group that have two dads, and the rest of it. So, for those of us who don't know, where do we go? I mean, I won't lie. My strategy was to make sure that before we did anything, we went pad, because I'm pretty sure I can tell her how to do the pad without having to do it, with her.
Yes.
And then let mom take over with any type of advanced teaching.
Yeah, no, and I see a couple other questions kind of coming on, and I agree with you. Hands-on session, and she's probably not going to be super comfortable with that either. So oftentimes by puberty ages, they're kind of they're aware that there's an opening between where their pee comes out and where their poop comes out.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes we can just say, okay, we got the landmarks, right? Your pee's coming out here. Your poop's coming out here. There's an open space in there. That's your vagina. And I know it may seem scary, but it's a closed space, because a lot of people feel like, well, I put something up there, it's going to go like all the way inside my body and get lost, and I'm not going to be able to get it out. So I think the one thing of reassuring is, hey, that's a closed space. So what we're going to do is you're going to put this, you're going to put this tampon, this wad of cotton, basically, in that area. So you can show them, even if you, use your hand like this, and then you say, okay, say this is you can do it like that, I guess. Say, this is what I've done in clinic, at least. Say, this is the vagina. And you just take that plastic introducer and you just insert that up. And it's usually about that long. And so you insert that up in there, and then you push the plunger, and you can show them, just, use it, a tampon just in the air, and you can use it as you're doing it on your fingers, plunge it up, and they'll see how it goes inside. And then you pull the plastic part out. I usually say, for comfort's sake and the ease of getting it in, don't stand straight up. You're going to sit on the toilet like you're using the bathroom, or you can stand. And they even have, usually in the packages, they'll sometimes even have a description of how to put it in. There are videos, that you can look to for that. I was going to say, there's one website. I don't know that it's an excellent website for contraceptive talks. I thought it actually had something about, inserting things in the vagina, but or standing and putting one foot up on the toilet, so it kind of opens up your pelvis, and then bending over and putting it in that way. And if it doesn't happen, or they're not comfortable, or just can't get it the first bit of time, that's okay. That is okay. And as they get more comfortable with their body, as they get a little bit older, it will come. But I usually do this with my fingers. Honestly, that's really what I do in clinic. And then show with just a plain tampon that you're putting it in that way, and how it works. And then just using the landmarks of pee and poop. Where is it coming from?
So the other question is, and this I think is the one that really hits with a lot of us, is that we all want to save our children from any kind of embarrassment or trauma of any kind if we can. Mm-hmm. If we're caught by surprise, maybe we didn't notice discharge in the laundry. Maybe our child didn't come to us and communicate about it for whatever reason. And it happens while they're at school, and we haven't put together the period pack for her to carry, or for them to carry, or whatever. Is it the best idea to go to school and pick them up? In order to spare them the embarrassment, or in the act of picking them up, are you increasing the embarrassment by bringing attention to the fact that they had to go home?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And I think so, kind of in a way dependent on what, the personality of that child. But I would encourage to not pick the child up to go home, and say, hey, you can have, in this day and age with COVID, who knows what's happening in schools, but, can you have a moment with the child? They probably have gone to the nurse's office or some other, trusted staff member, and who's helping them. And oftentimes in school, they are women, so they can be a little bit more empathetic in that regard, potentially, or share their own personal experience to decrease the embarrassment for the child. But I think, having a moment to have a conversation with her alone, and them to feel the moment to maybe let out a few tears, or to let out excitement, or whatever those feelings are going through right now. Just say, hey, this is a normal part of puberty, and this is something you've started. Some parents I've seen celebrate it, and they, on a more feminine end, if you want to say, they have a period fairy. So instead of a tooth fairy, they have a period fairy that might, provide for them, what is M&Ms, packages of some of the menstrual products out there. They may put other, fun things that child really likes in that. Doesn't mean you have to celebrate that or do that every month, but as like, okay, hey, we're going to spin this as somewhat of a positive experience. I think the more we say, oh my gosh, we got to take you home. It's like an illness. No. And I don't know, I don't think any of you would necessarily think like that, but they normalizing it per se. And this is what your body's going to be doing now on a monthly basis. It's part of how your body works. And so this is the day it chose to do it. And so here's a change of clothes. Here's some products. If they are completely unprepared and you feel like there's a lot of the day left to go and you can't get in some of that education, or at least let's put this pad on and then I'll see you, in 5-6 hours, you may want to take them home and just say, okay, let's use this day for a little education, get prepared, and then they get back to school the next day. But I would hesitate to fully remove them from the situation.
Okay. One of our other watchers, Brock, just pointed out that on TikTok, there have been several male teachers posting about how they're a teacher and they are there to support their, students in this time. One of them was even saying that they have a designated drawer in the classroom that has the products in it, and that there is no need to raise a hand or ask. Just if you need it, walk, grab one, go to the bathroom and take care of what you need to take care of, which I think is great. And I think most of us at this point, as the time comes closer, it might not be an all bad idea to talk to your child's school administrators and or teachers. Again, I don't have a lot of experience with teachers. My oldest is just now starting second grade, and she's still at the point where there's only one teacher. So it's really easy to check with one teacher what they have, but I'm sure by the time she gets closer to fourth, fifth, sixth grade, that they're probably going to have more than one teacher. But I'm assuming most schools would be open to those kinds of questions, correct?
Yes, I would hope so. And I think, my kids go to a smaller charter school, so they have they have multiple teachers, but they have a little bit more of that one-on-one. And I have seen, and I think this would be great to do more of. I don't know, if a lot of larger schools would, if this would potentially be abused over time or not, but having a basket, we used to have the old fashioned, and maybe sometimes in some places they do, the little coin machines where you crank it and out comes a tampon or a pad. And those are less, less common, but where there's a basket in the bathroom, where there are those products. And I think in this, especially now too, even potentially having it in both bathrooms, right? I mean, do we have to say the girls' bathroom and the boys' bathroom? No, as that gender identification is happening, maybe genetically it's female, but the identification gender is male or non-binary. And so depending on what bathroom they're choosing to use, we wouldn't want to discriminate and not have it in that bathroom either. So, you can really, I think we could really do a better job of providing those resources in discrete locations, and just with kids having some of the education, or just even seeing it's there. Oh, okay, here I can use it. And this doesn't have to become a big issue where, oh my gosh, I have to call my parents because I don't have what I need to take care of myself. And I'm in middle school. Nobody calls their parents to come get them in middle school for this issue. So I'm in full support of that. But I do think I've seen a lot more times where there's been a basket of feminine products, or menstrual products, I should say, really in the bathrooms, and they are available. I think that's fantastic what the teacher's doing. And I would, I'd support that.
Awesome. So you also brought up the children that we have out there who may be non-binary, or their gender identity is different from the gender that they were born with. This is a real thing, and it happens. I don't think it's happening any more than it used to. I think that we as a society are finally reaching a point where more people feel comfortable being their true selves. And I think that's a really, really great thing. But I imagine that this experience for someone who identifies as male or someone who is male, this would be a much, much more difficult event, and potentially a much more traumatizing event. And, you know, we're trying to avoid that for our kids in any way that we can.
Yeah. So I think oftentimes it gets to be about the language that we choose. And that I think so many of us, I sometimes still have to think or, you know, remind myself, because I'm not falling into the sort of the old traditional ways where we may have, you know, referred to, well, that person looks like a girl, so that means it's a her or she. And no, really kind of taking the time to know what the pronouns are that they prefer to be used with. So I think, again, getting back to this, talking about this in more of a scientific or non gender related process, right? This is your menstrual cycle. This is your monthly bleeding time. It's not, you know, oh, this is your path to womanhood, or, oh, you know, again, oh, well, thank gosh you're not pregnant. Or, oh, now you can have babies. Isn't that wonderful? That's again, that's not what it's about for kids at this age. So, and explaining that this is just how the hormones that your body makes, this is the effect of those, and keeping it without a gender attachment, I think is the most important thing. And again, and we call them feminine products, or menstrual products are probably the better way to talk about these things with them. I think I'm just thinking about the packaging a lot of these have. There's a lot of pink and swirls and all this other stuff. And of course, the scents and things like that oftentimes are applied to the pads. So I think that doesn't always help, but because there's so much more variety of products out there, there is a lot more that are pretty gender neutral. Like, this is plain cotton, plain white box. You don't have to have the pink. You don't have to have the lady on the cover, you know, with her little purse and her Barbie doll figure. There's lots of opportunities to buy gender neutral menstrual products as well. So I think just focusing on that, and then even asking them, you know, what would you like to call it? Because some people may not want to call it their period, or some might not want to call it, this is my monthly, or it may just, what would they like to have it be referred to? And then there's also, you know, it doesn't have to mean that they're going to bear children now. It doesn't have to mean it's their path to womanhood. If they're the same person, it's just this new process that's starting. You know, it's almost like, right, we get wisdom teeth. Some people get wisdom teeth. That's the process that happens as you get older. Doesn't matter if you're male, female, non-gender identifying, you're getting your wisdom teeth. And so the same kind of thing. This is a little bit more associated with, yes, you have this genetic composition, you will have this process happening. What happens when it's so distracting, or I guess just really undermining for some kids who are really just super uncomfortable with any process that their body may be going through that identifies them maybe more with a female gender than they would like to be. So birth control pills can come in very handy in this part. Doesn't mean that they're out going to be having sex, doesn't mean that they're out trying to get pregnant by any means. It's a great way to really control the periods. It maybe make them super predictable, make them come a lot less frequent. So you can do birth control pills where you're, and even very low dose ones where you're taking them for 3 months at a time. So they have a longer period of time where they don't have to kind of deal with that, or have that remembrance of like, oh, here's an indication that my body is maybe more like a woman as opposed to a man. You know, exposing young children to those hormones at early ages, I'm not super thrilled with, but at the same point, I think, and there are other medical reasons why you may not want to use them, but I also think we have to really, really be in touch with what that child's mental health is surrounding this. And if that's the most important at the end of the day.
And like anything else, everybody's kids are different. Don't make any medical decisions until you consult your own doctors, no matter what. Just in general, you know, Facebook, YouTube, we can put some great information out there, but not true medical diagnosis or recommendations in any way. Now, we talked a couple of times about the emergency kit. The only two things that I can think of off the top of my head that I would want to have in there would be, you know, obviously some sort of menstrual product, be it pad, tampon, whatever. and possibly a change of underwear,
Mhm.
because that's something small that, can be rolled up and fit in there. What am I missing? Are there other things that it might not be a bad idea to have in there?
Some folks get a lot of cramping, headaches with the onset of the cycle. So sometimes a little bit of ibuprofen could be very helpful. Just to, even the little individual packs are great. You could put those in there. Potentially even just like a wipes, like a small thing of baby wipes, or just some kind of wipes.
We all know
just,
wipes.
Yeah, just because of just because, if there's blood that's gotten on the skin around there, that just may seem uncomfortable. So that might be a nice thing to have in there as well. The change of underwear, absolutely. That's a great point. And that's about it that I can really think of. You certainly can put little, if you want to even include a little fun thing in it, like you said, a candy bar. I mean, if that helps, or a little packet of M&Ms or something, like, I'm just going to take one of these. But I also, well, we can acknowledge that I don't like to indicate all the time that, or excessively focus on the fact, oh, well, now that you're getting your menstrual cycle, you're going to crave chocolate, and you're going to crave pizza, and you're going to, get pimples, and you're going to do this and that. I'd like to focus it on, this is just a process in your body. You may feel some of these things, you may not, but I don't want to, I just feel like society sets that association. Oh, women get these and kids get these menstrual cycles, and all of a sudden they turn into all these mood swings. And it's almost like encouraging that this is the mold you're supposed to fit once you start getting your menstrual cycle and during that time of the month. And I don't want to minimize the symptoms, but I also don't want to amplify them such that they feel like they have to be feeling this way, and they feel like they have to add drama to that. Because especially in kids who are non-binary, or parents who are trans too, we don't need to again genderize this more than the physiology does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, as I said earlier, we have dads from every walk of life in this group, and we all have kids that fall into every walk of life in this group. I'm looking up right now to see if we have any other questions that are coming in. This seems to be what we have so far. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else that has popped up. If anybody does have any questions, whether you're watching this on one of our Facebook channels, or whether you're watching this here live on YouTube, just feel free to post any questions that you have out in the open, and we will be more than happy to. I'm just looking really quick to see if we have any others. Let's see.
The one thing I'll say too, just while you're looking, is, don't be afraid to make it a village. I kind of touched on that a little bit in the beginning, but if, you do not need to be a medical provider on this. You do not need to be the expert on the menstrual cycle. You can say, I don't know. Hey, let's find out this together, in grabbing some books, putting it in their room, and just saying, hey, I read this. I think you should too at some point. And then just leaving, like taking the pressure off of it, so they can use that as a resource in a confrontational way when they feel like they have some questions or want to clarify some things. And then when they do get that they come to you, they'll feel more open coming to you because, hey, they read that too. I can ask those questions. And also, even setting up a family time with, if there's aunts, if there's sisters, if there's really close female family friends that child feels comfortable with, hey, maybe they'll take her out to dinner, or take them out to dinner, or take them out to lunch, or take them out for ice cream, and, make it a fun day where that conversation goes in that direction, where they can talk about their individual experiences with it, is also something great to do too.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Now, earlier, since we don't seem to have any additional comments coming in, we did get one comment come in saying, thank you, Dr. Monaco, for your time and expertise. Someone else says, no question, but a huge thanks to Dr. Monaco for joining us this morning and sharing with us. And thanks to Matt and Brock for putting it together, mentioning that they'll see us in Cincinnati soon. We are having Home Dad Con in Cincinnati on the around October, I always forget the exact dates, 16th through the 18th. So hopefully we'll see some of you guys out there. Otherwise, we'll see you on any of our many different groups. But I wanted to thank you for coming out. Now, earlier in the webinar, you mentioned that you did have some resources and or products that might be helpful to us. I would love it if you could present those. And again, if you could email me that list afterwards, I can make sure it gets put like on the Facebook page and the rest of it so that the guys can see it.
So these are not specifically dealing with the menstrual cycle, but puberty in general, and specifically though for girls. So Untangled is one. I guess it's kind of hard to, I'm not sure on the camera other ways. Untangled, excellent, excellent book by Lisa D'Amour. And then the other one is Reviving Ophelia. So those are two fantastic books going through puberty with girls. I will send you those. And then the other book that is excellent, you know, again, for puberty, but a little bit more specifically focused on the menstrual cycle is Hello Flow, The Guide, Period. And that's by Nama Bloom. And there's others. I mean, there are a few others out there. That's definitely one that's been easy to read and well received by kids themselves. But yeah, I'll email those to you, Matt.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, look, on behalf of the National At-Home Dad Network and all the people that we have watching, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I know how busy you are.
Okay, thank you. It's been an honor. I had fun doing this, so thank you very much.
We thank everybody for coming out. I don't have an exact date for our webinar next month, other than the knowledge that is going to be a little earlier in the month than we usually do. But we're actually bringing in our own Brock Lusch, who is our chairman on the board of directors for our convention planning committee. And we have a lot of guys out there who have always wondered about what goes into the convention and all the rest of it. And we're basically going to do a behind the music on the National At-Home Dad Convention, and the amount of work and planning that goes into it, and everything from how we pick where to throw it to how you can join in and help us plan the next one, because we're always looking for extra minds and bodies to help out with the work. So on behalf of the National At-Home Dad Network, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next month. Bye.